These are the adventures of a temporarily out-of-work wife and mother, and this is our DIY Downstairs Makeover project. Now that all of the large things have been covered, I figured I'd give you a video of the smaller things that had to be done to make this project come to its completion. We installed brand new locks and door handles, which I showed you in another video. We got rekeyed to match our current key so that everyone who has a copy of our key doesn't have to get a new copy. And we got these beautiful black matte locks and door handles. While we were installing the one at the front door, we had a visitor. It was Carlita, and it's her 22nd birthday. Happy birthday, Carlita, again. Then I decided to paint the inside or outside of the garage door. It looked a little crazy. Every time I opened the door, one side was brand new and fresh, and the other side looked like it had been through World War III. And of course, there was no way that we could do this kind of work and not rearrange and reorganize that garage. We brought some things back inside the house and brought some things into the garage, like the paint and the new tools. Did I mention that in this process, we didn't just get a paint sprayer, but we also got an electric sander. Also, as a function of this project, I did the countertops. Of course, they really need to be replaced, but that comes with a hefty price tag that we're not ready to pay just yet. And when we do that, we need to do the floors too. So I went ahead and re-caulked the counters instead. Of course, that requires some repair. And yes, I used white caulk instead of clear because the clear caulk that we already had there was severely discolored. And even though it says that it's stain free, it's clearly not. So I decided to just use white. We'll see how well that holds up. And if it doesn't, I'll redo it using clear. But to repair those countertops, I did have to remove the pieces that were removable. I had to remove the existing caulk as much as was humanly possible, which was also part of the reason why I decided to use white, because there were some areas like right around the sink that I just could not remove. And so I literally removed as much of it as I possibly could and then just covered what I couldn't remove. And of course, I did this all around the kitchen so that it would be uniform, which included going around the back of the counters, the sides of the counters, and even down the sides of the cabinets. I did not re-caulk where the cabinets meet the baseboards because I think I'm going to have to get some black caulk for that. And while we were doing this caulking and repairing process, we also went ahead and cleaned up the kitchen, including the stove and the refrigerator, and putting those back in their rightful places, and removing the excess stain that got on the floor, which meant that I did have to touch that baseboard up because I removed some of the stain and poly from it too, using that lacquer thinner. That stuff is the truth. And once everything was done, I did just that. I touched up those baseboards and I got all of the remaining stain and poly off of the floor, which means that the floors were pretty much stripped. I did everything. I swept. I used the Swiffer mop and I used my mop vac. And then I turned back around and pretty much went over the whole floor with lacquer thinner and some Rubbermaid microfiber cloths, as well as the work cloths, which means that I am going to have to go back and wax the floors so that they have a protective coating so everything that spills on the floor doesn't stick, because I literally removed the lacquer from the laminate. I got that lady's son that I married to buy us some brand new mats. And with that done, my sunshine and I went ahead and hung that magnetic blackboard. It's dry erase and it's big enough for us to put everything. Calendars with schedules and birthdays, our grocery list, our scripture of the day, courtesy of my sunshine. And it looks absolutely great above that kitchen island. There's even room for my Nooney's surprise. And of course, we had to reorganize that pantry. That's how it started, and this is the after. No more stuff piled up on top of that refrigerator. Clear bins instead of those blue ones. And then to the living room where we replaced the blinds. Since we got the same style blinds, it was easy to just click and remove the old ones and then click in to install the new ones. Next up was reinstalling that coat tree once it was all done being stained. And child, I don't know why I had such a hard time getting this dang on thing even. I ended up making unnecessary holes and then having to go back and fill them and touch up the paint. But eventually I got her done. Now, those floating shelves that are going over my desk, they also needed to be sanded and stained, and I decided to do those the mahogany color. That way, they matched the desk. Now, installing those was pretty easy. All I needed to do was find at least 3 studs to make it easier for the shelves to bear weight. And then, of course, they came with anchors for any places where there wasn't a stud. This was a one-person job, but it was a lot easier to mark out your drill spots if you had someone who could hold the wall anchors. Now, I should have made that top shelf a little higher so that I could fit taller books on it, but no worries considering that I plan to use this more for display than for book storage. Plus, by having it skewed to the right, I do have some room over to the left for items that are taller. With each shelf secured, it was time to put the desk in its rightful place, clean everything off, get it all nice and purty, get all of the cords realigned, and get that new small bookcase put in its rightful place. We got new registers for all the air vents and decided to do the large airflow register as well. And baby, that was a chore. I attempted to do it, and then I had to get that lady's son that I married to come and do it, and it wasn't any easier for him to do either, but it got done. We also installed new light switch covers, outlet covers, and some outlet extenders. I also replaced several of the old outlets with the outlets that have USB and USB-C charging ports so that the outlets themselves would be free for items that need to be plugged in continuously. Now, I cleaned this folding table as often as possible, trying to limit how much stain and paint I got on it. Changed out the plastic in the garage multiple times. So we just gonna have to use table covers anytime we need to use that table for anything food related. Step 1 of creating our light board included using a handsaw to cut out a little divot in the wood to ensure that the light board could lay flat against the wall, leaving room for the cords, including the outlet extender as well as the LED light cord. When I finished with that, I did attempt to assemble the base of the light board using the Gorilla construction glue. And baby, that dang on wood did not stick to the Duralens. It just didn't hold up. I ended up having to take the contact paper back off and using hot glue. Now, mind you, I got this idea from a DIY on YouTube, and I thought it was wild that she used a hot glue gun. I could not figure out how that was supposed to hold this together. Shoot, she definitely knew better than I did because the hot glue worked. The Gorilla construction glue failed miserably. So with it secured with hot glue this time, I went ahead and affixed the LED lights and did the contact paper last. How this part of this project managed to be everything to me and the bane of my existence, I don't know. But I love the finished product, but not really. So I'm probably going to have to do it over. And then we moved on to the contact paper. We contact papered both the accent wall and the wall under the bar, even though that light board is going on top of it because we didn't want that old color or the splashes from the paint explosion to be showing through when the lights are on. My sunshine was instrumental in this process. There was certainly a learning curve for doing this on the wall, but once we got the hang of it, we were right as rain. And once I got to about the midpoint, I no longer needed help. It was a project that I could do by myself, which was a good thing because he had to go to school and basketball practice. So I got some gym mirrors from the Amazon and some trim as well as some poster board, and I made 3 mirrors. One of them I used 2 gym mirrors and the other 2 I used 3. I used that Gorilla construction glue to close up the seams where the trim meets, and it dried the same color as the trim, so it worked out perfectly. Then, of course, I used my leveler to ensure that I was hanging both of the 3 mirrored mirrors evenly on the large accent wall. I also had to do some measuring because I had to ensure that I had room for the photographs that are going to go on the wall and an accent piece that is going to go above the photographs, as well as the tape design that's going to go diagonal on the wall. And this is what the walls look like before the 3rd mirror is hung and the light board is hung under the bar top. And now let's install that light fixture. Of course, you have to turn the power off to the fixture, which means you're turning the power off to the entire room. Remove the old fixture Unbox the new fixture, make sure you have all of the supplies and tools that you need, review the instructions, and get to it. First things first, we had to remove the old base and install the new base. Connect the new fixture to the existing wires, turn the power back on, and test it to make sure that it's working. And then, because this new fixture was covered in jewels, I had to make sure that they were all secured, which included unwrapping the fixture little by little, picking up all of the crystals and the little pins as they fell down. And because this chandelier light fixture is dimmable, I decided to switch out the light switches with dimmable switches, and that was a whole fiasco. I have a quick recap for the day that I installed this where I discussed that at length. So to switch out the switches, once again, we turned the power off, we removed the old switch, and we installed the new dimmable switch. This did require quite a few adjustments, a learning curve, and several trips to the store. Pro tip: if you have a light switch that can be controlled from more than one location, only one of those locations can have the dimmable switch. The other switch needs to be a regular switch. Otherwise, the lights will flicker like hell. Now, of course, we couldn't forget about the front door and the screen door. We repainted that door, hung a little welcome sign, and installed a new handle for that screen door. But of course, we cleaned the screen door first. And our final video will be a full before and after with a full walkthrough. So stay tuned.